gentlemen, here he is, the sweet one. I hope you can hear us over the still deafening roar in this audience. The two sweets. Albeit you are the vanquished one tonight, I still...
10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Blast off.
Hey everybody, well welcome to a special edition of MovieStrange. We're recording this in February, which we know is Black History Month. And to be honest, we want to do a special kind of Black History show about cult films. We think we have two really good films, but we feel a little awkward that it's kind of three white guys on the internet trying to talk about black cult films, but we're going to do it anyway and see what happens. Because I think we have two very interesting films that I think we're going to enjoy talking about. You guys agree?
Yes.
We have definitely got at least one interesting film, and we've got two films that we're going to definitely enjoy talking about.
Well, interesting, I mean, I didn't say they were both good, did I? I didn't say that. Before we get started, hey, if this works and we get through this, please subscribe, hit the notification and all that stuff to, get us some views and
like
subscribers.
Button. Hit the like button.
The like button. We know this may be our last one, but we're going to try it anyway. So having said that, this is a little different than what we normally we bring a couple of films one film that I pick, but we're not going to do that. These guys have each brought what we're going to call a black cult film. And we're going to talk about these. I think they're like I said, they're very interesting. So Al, why don't you introduce the first one, which you brought to us, and then we'll get into it and see how it goes, and then we'll do the second one after.
Sure. I brought Penitentiary II that was released by Vinegar Syndrome on Blu-ray. They also released Penitentiary I, but I don't have that one. So
I have the trailer. I actually have the trailer that Vinegar Syndrome produced, which looks fantastic, unlike the film.
Done his time in one penitentiary. Now Too Sweet was doing all he could to stay out of Penitentiary II. Too Sweet's back.
He's back.
He's bad, beautiful, and he's looking for action.
O2 will come through.
Same old Too Sweet. Boy, have I been waiting for you.
Hey, I'm not boxing, man. My parole says I have to be in your employ for 1 year. It says nothing about...
that was Mr. T, by the
He
way.
made a deal to get out.
There he is.
You want to be a wise guy?
But the man wants to change it.
Well, I've got employment for you.
Permanently.
I told you, the gods see your point.
Same year he did Rocky 3. Oh, is that Ghostbusters, Ernie Hudson?
Are there any other times of Ernie Hudson?
I didn't think so until I saw this. Holy cow.
While he was doing time,
Yeah.
she was waiting.
So was he.
Word. You do exactly what I say.
When the world hits you this hard, you hit back harder.
Go back to the penitentiary.
What is going on there? Mr. T with that.
Out for revenge.
He's a genie.
Genie ball. Is that what he's doing?
No matter what the cost. Penitentiary II.
Okay. Now, in the trailer, he says he doesn't want to go back to Penitentiary II. I'm like, why would he want to go back to this movie? Was he in the first one?
Yes, he was the original Too Sweet.
Okay, so he came back. I guess what else was he going to do? All right.
Well, unlike in this movie, he was actually in jail the whole first movie.
Oh, okay.
In this movie, he just comes back
It starts with him getting out.
Right.
And visiting his sister, or living with his sister in a nice home, by the way. So
Well,
Al,
her husband is she's a lawyer, and her husband is a lawyer too. I think.
That's right. That's right. We want to talk about this one quick to get to the other one. No offense, but
Okay. So Too Sweet gets out of jail. He's trying to work he's trying to get rehabilitated into society, I guess. And I think the deal for his parole is he has to go work for the boxing manager.
Right.
So he's resistant because he doesn't want to fight. He doesn't want to box. He wants to live a normal life. However, he gets sucked back in when Half Dead is released, or he escapes from prison.
Played by Ernie Hudson.
That's right.
In this movie,
him and his cohorts, Do Dirty and Simp, they roll up to Too Sweet's sister's house, and Half Dead shows up and basically brutally rapes and murders Too Sweet's virgin girlfriend.
Yeah.
As Too Sweet's trying to get laid for the first time, or for the first time since getting out of prison. He gets sucked back into boxing, and then the rest of the movie just like turns to crap, and we get like two of these extremely extended boxing sequences that are not really interesting at all. I think they're just trying to pad runtime.
Definitely that second one they did. They used scenes from the first one and the second one. The guys playing dice or whatever they were playing. Yeah. That's repeated twice.
Yeah. So we get a lot of duplication in the last hour of the film. And it almost seems like the film turned into like a party movie. It wasn't necessarily about like Too Sweet anymore. It was more about having fun and watching boxing. I don't know.
It looked like it looked like they were having a party while they were filming this thing. That's what it looked like, that last scene.
The reason to watch this movie is for Ernie Hudson, because if you've only ever seen him in Ghostbusters or in The Crow or any, TV or film where he's playing like a cop or a military guy, this is completely opposite. He is gross and mean, and he treats his girlfriend like crap. He has a hard-on for Too Sweet, I think. Like he wants to just have sex with him and destroy him. I'm not sure. I think that's kind of explained in the first movie. There's like some homosexual undertones, especially if you read the Star Wars crawl at the beginning of the film.
Yeah, that's right out of the gate. There's the Star Wars. It's very long and informative, I guess. Yeah, I think that I haven't seen Penitentiary, but my understanding is it's a much more serious movie, and it is about Too Sweet going to jail, I think, for a crime he didn't commit. And it's about boxing. Like the guy that he fights twice in Penitentiary II is a guy that he fought, I guess, and beat in Penitentiary. And the characters like of Half Dead and Seldom Seen, those were guys that were in prison with him. And so there is a history there, and that's all explained in that opening crawl, which is bizarre because the movie is not serious except for certain scenes that are horrendous. Yeah. And it's also a goofy 80s movie in a lot of ways. So
it's a totally... But when did it come out?
It's this weird... it's like this weird disco hangover film. It's like it kind of feels like the end of blaxploitation as a genre. It's like towards the end of like when you go back to like, what is it? Sweetback's Badass Song and like Shaft and stuff. This is like at the end of when we kind of get into like parody and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, because his job when he gets out before going to the gym to get hired was as a roller skating courier, right? Delivering stuff.
I think so. Yeah.
And then they have that big
scene, roller skating,
where they meet and they're doing the roller skating in the park in, I guess it's California. I don't know where they're from.
Yeah, I think it's down in Venice somewhere. And
they're all discoing in the rollers, and yeah, it's definitely an 80s film, but. It's just.
I think the big missed opportunity in this. Well, let's roll back to Mr. T. Let's roll back to Mr. T for a second.
Right.
Rocky 3 was already made when this was filming. The guy that played Too Sweet, he wanted to have the distribution company and the marketing team to release after Rocky 3 because he knew Mr. T was going to be a big star, and that would have meant more people would have gone to see this movie. So, Mr. T was already in the waiting to become a big star.
Right. He's in this film because Stallone told the director to put him in the film.
Right. but Rocky 3 was done. It was in the can before this even shot, but this movie still came out before Rocky 3 was released.
Holy cow.
Mr. T is really funny. He dresses up in genie outfits and like rubs a lamp and like there's smoke and it's really
he's
corny
funny. He's funny in a weird way. I mean, he's not funny. He's not funny. He's just odd.
There's a great scene where they're in a park and Mr. T's in like this gold genie outfit with a couple of ladies, and I swore it was going to turn into a porno film for like 5 seconds.
Again, you said great scene. It was an interesting. It's a great. There's just a lot of weird like, and the Tony Cox, is that his name? The little person who was playing dice a couple of times, who's he's in Bad Santa. He's in Bad Santa.
He's had a long career. He's been in a lot of stuff.
A long time. So. He had the scene with the woman under the boxing ring. All right. Okay.
The biggest missed opportunity in this film was during the last fighting, the last boxing scene. Mr. T was fighting Half Dead, and I feel like if they would have focused on that fight, like John Carpenter focused on the Roddy Piper Keith David fight. That in They Live, that would have been amazing.
Right. It just ended. Did he kill him?
We
I don't
just
even know.
see Too Sweet dance around a ring for like 20 minutes, and like,
they kept intercutting. The intercutting in that was crazy, right? Because they would
but
literally
it wasn't good intercutting.
No, it was
the editing in this movie is I would say
non-existent.
Like, the movie has a lot not going for it, but it could have still been fun. But the editing is almost tragic. Because some of the choices that they make, like the whole thing of Mr. T beating up Half Dead is basically Mr. T getting revenge for his fighter who's actually fighting. Like there is some drama to that, but the whole thing is just kind of goofy and it's intercut with the fight in the ring, which is not interesting, and it's intercut with Too Sweet's family showing up to say we're safe, you can win this fight. Oh, spoilers. But I don't know. It's a weirdly disappointing ending. And Mr. T, I mean, listen, Mr. T is Mr. T. He definitely is memorable in the movie, but he's no Clubber Lang.
But it does show, like he got A-Team out of this stuff, and he was a presence, no question. But back up, did we ever see Half Dead die or get hurt or killed at the end?
They had bloody mouths at the end, but you don't see
a lot of blood pouring out of mouths in this one. I mean, I've been asking for blood and gore. There's a lot of blood in this one. Just like copious amounts of blood pouring out of guys' mouths. And then the grossest thing is when Half Dead jams a potato salad in his girlfriend's mouth. Oh yeah. That was awful.
Yeah, he's a real charmer.
That I'm sorry, I forgot about that scene. That's the other choice scene if you want to see it. Him, Ernie Hudson lick potato salad off of Sugar's face.
It's just awful. All right, I don't want to talk about this.
The other problem with the movie is that there's one scene which you mentioned at the beginning when Half Dead rapes and murders Too Sweet's girlfriend.
Yeah.
That is maybe brutal. That's more like the tone of the first movie. I don't know.
Yeah.
That is really dark. It could have been more graphic and it wasn't. So I was glad for that. But it's really brutal and awful. And when Too Sweet finally opens the door, because this is all happening in the bathroom, that he's on the other side of the door waiting. I think Half Dead is finished murdering, but is still raping. Like the whole thing is just awful. And then the tone of the movie goes back to definitely, it's still violent and everything, but it's definitely more goofy. And I think that just keeps that goofiness just keeps going to the end, including Mr. T having this ridiculous overwrought brawl with the same guy who raped and murdered and is awful. So,
well, yeah, I think the fight that Too Sweet and Half Dead had, as they were fighting in the bathroom and out in the living room, that was a really good fight scene. That was really intense. They were both sweaty, and the way the lighting was, it was very 80s, and I thought it was good. And if they could almost recreate that at the end with Mr. T doing the same thing to Half Dead and then killing him, I guess. I think it would have made it a lot better.
I guess that's what bothered me, is that so much more brutal than the rest of the film. And like you're saying, they missed an opportunity to be brutal again, which would have been appropriate because Half Dead, as villains go, he's he's pretty awful. So
that's Ernie Hudson
being punished
from Ghostbusters. I kept saying that's
Ralph, I don't know if you know this, but Ernie Hudson is an actor.
What?
And he plays different roles.
Huh? What?
And though he may be beloved as one role, he plays other characters differently. Like I remember I had a tough time in the beginning of the 1990s when I saw Awakenings and just fell in love with Robert De Niro and wanted him to be healthy. And then I saw Cape Fear and wanted to back over him with a car.
Yeah, I always have my kids do that. I'm doing it. It's like they see if someone in a movie, they go, I know that guy. I've seen him somewhere. Yeah, he does a lot of movies. I know, but it is shocking to see him. I mean, this is shocking. So
it's very violent.
There was a cameo. Rudy Ray Moore did a cameo, Dolomite. So if you want to see him do a cameo, then check that out.
What the hell is going on down there?
It's unmistakably him, which is really funny. I mean, he has his own, talking about acting, he's got his own distinct style.
Which one was he in the film?
Definitely him. He's the one that he and his wife are on the balcony, and he yells at Seldom Seen and the girls on the street, and then his wife starts yelling at him, and that's Rudy Ray Moore. He sounds like Rudy Ray Moore. He acts like Rudy Ray Moore. Like it's a fun cameo because even if you don't know him, he's very distinct. And then of course that Eddie Murphy movie about him that came out, I guess, last year was a great movie about Rudy Ray Moore. So if you're interested in blaxploitation type movies and the history of them, that's a great sort of tour through one of the big names of seriously goofy filmmaking of the year.
All right. Oh, I'll have to take. That's the Dolomite film you're talking about, right? Is that what it's called? Dolomite?
Yes. I can't. Dolomite was Rudy Ray Moore's film, which is almost like his version of Shaft and those kind of movies.
Yeah.
But it's just so goofy, and his kung fu and everything. I'm totally blanking on the name of the
we'll dig that up.
The Eddie Murphy movie. Like in other podcasts, I know these guys, they're brothers. They always forget names and get them wrong and stuff. So you can flash on the screen.
Can
the
we
name of that
throw
movie.
their pictures? Yeah, throw their pictures up. The two brothers.
I'm sure you can.
What's their names? You know their names? I don't know. All right, let's move on. I want to talk about the film that we really want to talk about. That, by the way, thank you for bringing Penitentiary II to the table.
You're welcome. I'm sure that's an hour and 48 minutes you can't get back.
Well, whatever. We watched it. We enjoyed it. It's good for the show. Now,
it kept us from watching Penitentiary and Penitentiary 3.
I will not watch either one of those anymore now that I've seen this one. I will
say, though, I mean, that is a movie that was shot for no money in 5 weeks, and the Vinegar Syndrome restoration
looks fantastic. No, Vinegar Syndrome always does a great job.
Really nice job. Just, they gave it a level of respect that maybe it didn't deserve, but
no, they gave it the loving care it deserved.
No, they did, and his parents financed the film, and they get the credit at the end, dedicated to them.
Right.
So I'm sure they were proud of that.
Apparently, they own the rights to the film too, so they have residuals coming.
Oh wow, that's awesome! So there was a Penitentiary 3. Are there any beyond that?
I want to say they were talking about
the end of the trilogy.
4, but
okay.
When I'm hanging around on hooks, I like watching MovieStrange.
The next film is going to be a little trickier to talk about, I think. Maybe it's a fantastic film. I'm going to let Drew talk about the film that he brought. And Drew, what's the next film that you brought to the show?
The next film, and I'll just introduce it and then please show the trailer.
Yes, sir.
It's from 1973. It's based on a book of the same name. The book was just like a bomb going off in the 70s, and the movie was just as powerful. And there's a whole story behind what happened to the movie. But it's called The Spook Who Sat by the Door. I wouldn't call it a blaxploitation movie. It's definitely a cult movie, because of the story of what happened to the movie after it was made, and we'll talk about that. But let's take a look at The Spook Who Sat by the Door.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. The Spook Who Sat by the Door. The controversial best-selling novel now becomes a shocking screen reality. The story of the first black agent in the CIA.
Whoever they select will be the best-known spy since 007.
Their first mistake was letting him in.
And let me congratulate you on being the first Negro officer in the Central Intelligence Agency.
Their worst mistake was letting him out.
You really want to mess with Whitey? I can show you how.
For 5 years, he was their token Negro.
Freeman, you people must serve.
For 5 years, he kept his cool.
Man, you just don't belong. I think you'd be happier with a mop in your hands. Like your mama.
And in return, they taught him how to spy, how to fight, how to kill. For 5 years, he was the spook who sat by the door. And then he turned gangs of ghetto kids into a highly trained guerrilla army.
We live off the land. We match technology with spontaneity and improvisation. Men against machines, brains against computers. Now, if you don't think it can work, you check out Algeria, Kenya, Korea, and Vietnam. Can you dig it?
He turned a summer riot into a revolution.
This is not about hate white folks. It's about loving freedom enough to die or kill for it if necessary.
He turned the American dream into a nightmare. Yesterday, a novel. Today, a movie. The Spook Who Sat by the Door.
And the mayor's office is now air-conditioned, courtesy of the Black Freedom Fighters of Chicago.
That's Mayor Daley's office.
I gotta say, I love this film. And go ahead, Drew. Explain a little bit more about it, because it's got a rich history, sad history.
Yeah,
it's just amazing.
It's an extraordinary film. It's based on a novel of the same name by Sam Greenlee. He also wrote the script. Ivan Dixon directed it, and he, before and after, until his death, worked steadily as a television director. It starred.
By the way,
Lawrence
Ivan Dixon was in Hogan's Heroes, right? He was one of the prisoners in Hogan's Heroes. Just so everybody knows.
Yep.
Get some context on him.
That's the thing. And Lawrence Cook was a working movie and television actor for a long time. Like, this was, I mean, it's a low budget movie from the early 70s, but it's made, which I think this is important. It's made by competent professionals. So the way that the movie is actually produced, I think, is very impressive. It's got a great tight script. It works as a suspense movie. It works as an action movie. But then, of course, what it also really works as is this really inflammatory look at race relations in this country. And as anyone who's still lives in this country can tell you, what this movie is about, and I'll talk about that in a second, is just as relevant today.
Oh my God. 100%.
I wouldn't say it's prescient, because it's basically about race in America and the violence that it causes to the victims of racism and their responses to that violence. And this movie, it was produced by United Artists. So that, again, this is a real movie. It was in the theaters for about 3 weeks, and then it was pulled. The story is, this is what the author Sam Greenlee said, and other people have said this. It's not really confirmed, but it's definitely part of the legend of the film, is that it was so inflammatory that the FBI actually went to exhibitors and said, you can't show this movie. Which, that's something, I mean, I grew up with movies like New Jack City and Boys in the Hood coming out, and that's not safe and all this kind of stuff. And that's a whole other level of suppression, I think, of these kinds of movies. But the movie basically disappeared for decades. And recently, it came out on DVD, a nice, well restored release by, I think it's Monarch Video. And then the New York Film Festival did a revival back in 2018. And this movie that a lot of people had seen growing up, people that worked in the movie business, it was very influential. And then I'd never seen it. I'd heard of it, but I'd never seen it. And now it's much more widely seen, and it was well respected the whole time, because the premise of the story is a guy who decides to join the CIA. He's from a poor neighborhood in Chicago, and he basically plays, and this is explicitly said in the movie, he's going to play the Uncle Tom role, and he's going to play along with these white spy masters, and he's going to learn all these skills. And they say, it's established right at the beginning of the movie, well, we need a token black person, hence the spook who sat by the door, so everyone can see that this guy is there and he represents that they're more liberal or they're fighting racism or essentially some nonsense. And what he does is his whole plan is to learn those skills from the CIA and then go back to Chicago and recruit gang members and start an armed uprising. And that's what he does.
Spread throughout the country.
Quite extraordinary.
I mean, he sets it up.
Well, he wants to make cells throughout the country, which is what happens.
Yeah. And the word is that there are other. Well, okay. So there's some scenes in here that, okay, all the white people in this are complete caricatures, right? I read a review.
The directed performances are very broad and very
the African Americans
are realistic, though.
I read a review where they said the African Americans are 3D, the white guys are all 2D. 100%. That's what's going on.
I think that's fair, and also I think an accurate representation of what the story is trying to tell you.
Of course,
but I mean, it's not having grown up during that time. It seems like that the white people would act that way then. Like they would be openly racist and say all these terrible things and want to have token black people to show off, to parade around. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but it feels true to me.
It absolutely feels authentic. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the point. And that's why it feels so real now. That's why it seems so. By the way, let's just say this too. It's available on YouTube. The full movie is available if everybody wants to watch this. I mean, I suggest buying it because I think you should support this stuff, but it's available if you want to see this thing. The white people do come off as, terrible human beings. And frankly, that's okay. I'm okay with that in the context of the film, given what's going on. I just can't get over that. I mean, and the other issue that came out is there's a scene where they talk about all the white people are saying how stupid these people are, right? They don't know what they're doing. Then they cut to the scene where they explain how.
What do you mean? I almost. What do you mean, you people? But what do you mean, these people? You
how
mean
stupid the African Americans are. How stupid.
Just in general, they're
in general. They never give them. They just don't think they're smart at all. This is what's taking place in this film.
That's true.
And then they do the scene where he explains to them. He asks them, "What happens if the top two people get killed in this militia we've created?"
What happens in an underground organization when the first and second in command are either killed or captured? Daddy?
Each man is trained to handle positions 3 steps ahead of him in grade. The operations officer moves up and takes command, and everyone else moves up 2 grades.
Good.
I mean, he even weaponizes systemic racism, that existed then and basically still exists now. The idea that a black man with a mop, nobody notices, right? So he sends these guys in, to work in the office, and the guy sitting there doesn't know what's, oblivious to what's going on. He's stealing things off the desk. Just an amazing tactic that he was teaching these guys.
Absolutely.
And then there's that scene where the riot happens.
Right.
And one thing you didn't say is his friend is an African-American police chief. The CIA guy. Right. He's a detective. And they're buddies. They've been buddies since childhood.
Since they were kids in a gang, yeah.
And there's a scene where there's a riot happening. And all of a sudden, these German Shepherds come out. And it's the African-American cop who says, "Get rid of these dogs. Do you understand what you're doing by bringing these dogs out? You're turning this thing. You're going to inflame everybody. If you don't get this dog..." Go ahead.
He's diffusing the situation. He is successfully telling people, let's calm down. You're not wrong to be upset, but let's go home before anybody gets hurt.
He's trying to diffuse it.
And then the dogs show up. Yeah.
And then that's what... the explosion, everything goes crazy. He even threatens to kill the dogs. To the other, get those dogs out of here.
Personally, but I understood.
You understood. So this
look, I mean, the movie structurally, the screenplay is very clever, especially talking about what are these people, these characters, are they smart enough to learn the things that the CIA teaches? The stuff that you see Freeman learning is explicitly repeated, when he's training the gang members to become this army, essentially. Like the lines about what happens if someone gets killed that you mentioned, and even the this is how you make a bomb. I mean, literally the dialogue is the same. You take these two wires and you cross them, and then you set this up, and the scenes of Freeman learning how to do that in CIA training are repeated. This is how you blow up a car with a bomb. This is how you blow up a car with an ignition bomb. So he's not only clearly a good student and it's acknowledged he's definitely one of the more capable and better graduates of CIA training. He then takes that back and inculcates his own recruits with that level of skills. When they start doing things like stealing weapons and ambushing National Guardsmen and doing all sorts of terrorist activities, it's very plausible. I believe it, because this is also the 70s when the Viet Cong is defeating the giant United States military, on their home turf. So,
well, I mean, you can see that throughout, recent history. Like, we provided support to Afghan insurgents to fight Russia, and we got blowback when Al Qaeda, attacked us in 9/11. So, I mean, this is kind of how it works sometimes.
Well, that's very American, is that we forget that kind of history.
Yeah, we forget all our history. Oh my God,
we always forget our history. But I mean, like what you just said about Afghanistan. I mean, Osama bin Laden was the guy, and the Mujahideen were the guys we were giving Stinger missiles to shoot down Russian helicopters, because they were our friends fighting the communists. And then later they became our enemies. And I know there are people in this country. If you said, yeah, we used to support Osama bin Laden, and the people that became the Taliban, they were our allies. They're people who that's ridiculous. I don't believe you. They're terrorists. And to me, terrorism is a tactic. And anything you do in war obviously has a moral value or a moral standing, but terrorism is a tactic, just like using artillery is a tactic. And what's interesting in this movie is that it shows, I think, a pretty realistic campaign of how a guerrilla force would attack. Essentially, you have to remember, and it's no different today. A lot of neighborhoods, the police are not what people go to for help. They essentially behave like an occupying force. So this is about a guerrilla group trying to dislodge and disrupt an occupying force. And one of the things that I really liked, they blow up, as you said, they blow up the mayor's office. But they make clear, because they blow up the mayor's office, and then they hijack, when that happens, they hijack a radio station and tell everybody, we're going to blow it up now. It's midnight, and he does a countdown. But he says, we're blowing it up when nobody's there. And that's what the IRA did many times in England. They said, we're going to blow up this building, get everybody out in an hour, because we don't want to kill people. We want to make it too hard for you to live your life. And that's a kind of terrorism that is portrayed in the movie. They don't go after and kill white people for being white people, but they do have running gun battles and ambushes of policemen and National Guardsmen, because that's who they're fighting. That's very intense.
That's a good scene, by the way. And
oh yeah,
the army. What was the name of the army that got Patty Hearst?
The Symbionese Liberation Army. Yeah.
Supposedly they use this film as kind of their tactics too. They kind of looked at some. I mean, when you watch this film, they're showing some stuff in here, building the bombs, building the Molotov cocktails. They're showing you things that I'm not quite sure people would let you show nowadays. Right.
But there were other groups too. Like there was the Weather Underground in the 70s. Right. There was the German Red Army faction, or the Baader Meinhof gang. These were all groups, basically bombing, and the Baader Meinhof gang killed an ambassador to Sweden, I think. So like this is for that time, this is very real. Like I would have to assume that people in power had very real concerns that this kind of thing could happen, and they would do anything that they could to remain in power and prevent some kind of guerrilla force from overthrowing the government or taking control.
Does that sound at all familiar to anything going on? Anything?
Right.
I know.
Well, it's interesting. I was going to bring up Baader Meinhof because that's one thing this movie doesn't do. But in the 70s, like you said, there were terrorist groups all over the world. And a part of that era was that these groups cooperated. Like there were training camps in Libya that you could be from Red Army faction, from Baader Meinhof, from the PLO, from other different terrorist groups, and people worked together. So there was this whole fear of, I think they referred to it as the octopus, like these terrorists that would get into everything, and they're all from all over the world. And people like Carlos the Jackal, who's a real person, was essentially a big famous international mercenary terrorist, that sort of thing. But the Baader Meinhof especially, I think that stuff is fascinating in general, but that's a terrorist group of people that are educated and are fighting. I think my understanding of the motivation of them is a political motivation and also a motivation of history. Like there are some people, I don't have a citation, but there are some people who believe that the college kids and the young people in the 70s who became terrorists and recruited other people, like Ulrika Meinhofer was a journalist, a working journalist who became a terrorist. They were very angry about things like the fact that their parents' generation were Nazis, and many of them were not punished. They just faded back into society. So they were reacting violently to a historical wrong. Well, I mean, this movie is reacting violently to centuries of historical wrongs.
100%. And they do that whole convincing scene. There's that scene they do. A couple of things are going on. Okay, there's also, I don't know how to say this without, I mean, this is, again, three white guys trying to do this. This is difficult, right? But there's a whole conflict between light-skinned black and dark black. And then they do that whole scene where
the war is over.
They're talking about living on a plantation, right?
You're not a slave anymore.
They act out that whole,
Free, master? Is that bad, master? I go on to die?
You're free, George.
And it just shows that the institutional racism that's been going on forever, and this film just comes at it head on. Yep. And this is what I mean about this thing. Okay, so we're doing this cult movie thing, and most of these movies are silly, especially we've done some crazy 1313 Cougar, whatever. And
well, that hasn't aired yet. So
it doesn't matter. It's still in my head. It's still there, so it's affecting me. And then I come across this film, and it blows me away. Okay, it literally, it's what they say when you do a drug that changes your mindset. This movie just, it's like
you're talking about ayahuasca.
Whatever it is, I don't know. All I know is it's in there now. And this movie's been out since 1973 or been around since 73. And I had never heard about it, Drew, until you brought it up. And it's an amazing art. It's an amazing piece of art. And how secure they were in the film. You talk about the filmmaking between this and Penitentiary II. This was made by people who knew how to make films. Okay?
Yep.
They were secure in their shots. They were secure in the situation, the writing, all this stuff. I mean, it's an amazing piece of art that's also very relevant. 72, how many years? It's like 50 something years ago, right? I mean, come on.
It's almost 50 years ago. It's almost 50 years ago.
And we're living that right now, and nothing's changed. And it just shows you nothing's changed, and it blows my mind. It blows my mind.
Well, I mean, the whole I can't remember if we said this, but the whole impetus for the riot is because cops shot down an unarmed black man running away from them.
Right in the back.
That's right. In the movie.
In the back. That's why. And so, like, nothing has changed.
Nothing's changed.
I mean, maybe the veneer has gotten a little slicker, but it's still, it's still terrible.
Yeah.
Well, what I kept thinking of when I was watching this movie, because it's a very powerful movie, and like you said, it couldn't be more relevant and resonant.
Unbelievable.
But when George Floyd died this summer in 2020, and it set off another stage of protest and movement, and really extraordinary forces moving and in some ways finally awakening into the public consciousness what was wrong. And what you could see is this, as you just said, this still the same wrong. There's a journalist named David Jones, and he went into the streets of I I can't remember exactly where it was, but when all these protests began and Black Lives Matter sort of exploded into the national consciousness bigger than ever. And he interviewed an author named Kimberly Jones. And it's a clip on YouTube that he posted. It's like 6.5 minutes long. And she, is just it's great, passionate insight into the history of, I would say, of police brutality, but it's really of America and Black people in America and white people in America. And she gets very passionate. It's very moving. It's one of the most memorable things that came out of all the media that was on YouTube and in the news and everything out of that summer. And at the end, she says that basically white people are lucky that Black people want equality and not revenge.
Oh, you know what? I saw that. Yep.
I mean, that's what this movie is about. This movie is about 50 years ago. So this character says, I think we'll go for revenge. And you understand it.
And it's not even just like in the movie, it's not even just about like hating white people or killing white people. Right. Like he wants freedom at no cost. It doesn't matter if it's other Black people standing in the way. He wants freedom at no cost, and he will do whatever he needs to do in order to push forward to, I guess, create. He says at one point that he wants to create a new nation, and one that he has to pay. They have to pay freedom dues for. So that means at all costs you're in. If you're not in, then you need to get out.
Yeah, and he's not planning on dying, but he knows that his approach is, if I die, that this is worth doing.
Well, again, someone else will take someone. Right, and the film ends with him. Spoiler alert: 50 years ago, and the cop recognized the voice that was on the radio broadcast.
Right,
and he ends up. They end up getting in a life and death fight, which ultimately they both died from. Right. And the movie ends with a radio broadcast saying there's riots breaking out in eight places. They named the 8 places. He named Boston and Detroit, and he went through a list of the 8 places he wants this thing to spread out. And that's how the movie ends. It ends with you hearing that this stuff is going on around the country.
Well, also keep in mind that what triggers that combat at the end between these two former friends is the police officer recognizes that his old friend is the leader of the terrorists.
Right.
And Freeman has already discussed in a previous scene how he would really like to recruit this detective, this friend. Like he would like they're always looking for allies, people on the inside that can be of use to them. And he thinks that he could recruit him. And I think, and you're watching that part of the movie, and you've already seen that this detective, I mean, yes, he's a police officer and everything, but he's a decent man. He wants there to be peace. He's the one you mentioned. He was almost got this riot to sort of, break back into a quiet evening, and then the dogs show up.
Right.
But he really believes I can recruit him. I can change his mind. And at the end, when they kill each other, it's another level of the tragedy of people being set.
And by the way, to bring it back
to share a common cause,
to bring it back to a movie podcast or a movie video cast for a second, that actor playing his friend was the judge in A Few Good Men. I don't know his name. I'm sorry, but it's a guy at the end of A Few
Good Preston,
right? Who turns to Jack Nicholson and says, "Sir, you better." Him. That's the guy. To bring it back to a movie podcast, okay? Let's just.
Well, he's also in Air Force One and lots of other
movies. He's in a ton of stuff. But anyway,
there's a number of people in this movie that are very familiar faces.
But a lot of people who didn't do anything, right? In the movies. But a lot of people who didn't do anything, like the lead guy. I think this was his last film. This was the director's last film.
They did a lot of TV work.
Okay, but not film work.
Nothing like this.
Yeah,
nothing like this.
I guess for me, like the relationship between Freeman and the detective, like it kind of like when they're talking, it's almost like the detective has to choose between his race or being a person, and like being a white guy, I can't even imagine what a choice like that would be. Like,
how can
it's just not something that enters into my thoughts
This is why it's hard for us to be doing this, but. This film, I keep saying this, and I'm sorry I keep saying it. The film is amazing.
It's a great American movie.
And I really want as many people that can see this to see this one.
Yeah.
Because it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. And like Al is saying, it's a little frightening because it's 50 years later and nothing has changed. Nothing, including films like this being taken off the shelves because they're too controversial or whatever. Nothing's changed.
Well, it's interesting that you say nothing has changed, because the day that we're recording this, there was actually, I had heard that this was in the works, but there was actually an official announcement from the FX TV network that Lee Daniels, who's a well-known director and producer, he did The Butler, and he does the TV show Empire and a lot of other big projects. FX gave the green light for him to do a TV series that is a remake of this movie.
Oh, wow.
So that, I mean, I don't know what the schedule will be for that. FX seems to be, I think they're closer to the cable TV model of HBO and things like that, or Netflix, where you don't shoot a pilot, then you make a decision. Like, I want to learn more about the deal. They may have already said, well, we're going to make 6 episodes or whatever it is. But I think that will probably be worth seeing in general. But the fact that it's not only, this was a good story and a good movie that people may not have seen, this is about the same things that are real today. So I think it's wonderful that this movie has been able to find more of an audience literally in just the past few years. But also this TV show, which I hope on its own is good, if that brings more people to see this movie and to have the historical perspective, that's really special, I think.
I just have to wonder if it's going to be watered down. Like this movie feels raw, and like it's well made, but it feels raw and real. And I just feel like if you get like a major network or FX involved, it's going to look slick and it's just going to be diluted. And maybe because it's FX, it won't be, but like it just
possible.
There's something about this movie.
But why not? But okay, they didn't water down the OJ. There's lots of series that have come out that aren't watered down. They can do a lot more on cable right now. Things are just happening differently and better. Okay, let's say they water it down. At least it's getting out there again. I mean,
that's true.
Well, that's the thing.
I mean, if it could bring more people to see the film,
that's right. I think it'll bring more people to see the film.
I have not that everything FX has made is the best or whatever. They've done a lot of really wonderful television and some of my favorite stuff. But I'm happy that it's at FX as opposed to CBS.
Of course.
I mean, they're going to have a broader freedom as far as because you can look at the movie and you could say, wow, this is really violent, and there's all this stuff that's like an R-rated movie, a mature television show. But what it's about is the most incendiary and real stuff, and I don't have any reason to think that the TV show won't try and capture that. So I'm excited.
Well, can you imagine how they're going to do that scene where they grab the general or whoever it is and they paint him in blackface?
Yeah, we didn't talk about that scene. That's crazy.
And then feed him LSD or whatever. Oh my God. Yep. And then ultimately they shoot him. They shoot him in the Yeah.
He's riding around on a tricycle in blackface and
he goes, I love black. I just hung out with all these black. He didn't say black people, but I hung out with all these people, and boom, they shoot him right in the heart. Done.
Yep.
I mean,
I
like to see how they pull this off.
The movie moves. I mean, there's no fat on this movie.
I'm saying it's very. It's you know what it is? Here's the word I'm looking. It's a confident film. It's a confident film.
Yes, it is. That's a great description.
They're doing things in here that like scenes that and they're doing them like guerrilla style. They're out there just shooting this on the street. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess the movie takes place in Chicago, but I think they shot in Indianapolis or somewhere else. They were able to take over the whole city. But yeah, very confident the way they shot this thing and stuff they were doing. I just
the only thing in the screenplay that, as far as a screenwriting thing that to me it's almost the crux of what makes the movie believable, and I didn't quite believe it, but I decided that I was okay with what they did, which is that moment when Freeman has come home and he encounters those guys at the pool hall that are from the gangs. Right. And in one scene, he takes them out in the alley because they're going to kick his ass, and he turns the tables on them. And in one scene, he has brought them on board with what he's going to do.
True.
And I thought to myself, is it plausible that it's one scene? Time passes over it, but you know what he's got to sell, essentially, it might go right to the heart of what these characters really want to do.
Plus, they knew him.
So
they knew him.
I was fine with it. Well, they knew him.
He was an ex. He was an ex gang member.
He was. They made it clear he was a member of this. I think it was the King Cobras, which is a real gang in Chicago. But he didn't have a criminal record. That's how. It's like this guy devoted his life to being able to get into the CIA, to play the game, to learn what he needed to learn, to go home and start a war.
Right.
And it's shockingly plausible on so many levels, like the rest of them.
I mean, listen, the silliest part of the whole film is the CIA training at the beginning. And all the cardboard cutout,
sure.
Like that was the silliest part of the whole thing. Even the other recruits that he was dealing with were a little bit, cartoon cat. And you knew he was going to be the one that would come through. So once it got past that and it got into the seriousness of the film, that's where the tone just completely changed.
Well, but even in that, I remember you don't realize who the main character is.
True.
At first, because you have the 10 recruits and everything they're socializing after they've been told that you guys have made it to essentially the final round or whatever, and they're being watched, which is, I mean, of course it's the CIA, of course they're being spied on, like that's just because it's a CIA movie. But they say something about Freeman is the guy that you didn't even notice him at first, and then I realized when you first see him, I don't remember him from that scene. Yeah. He very well might have been in that scene. But, if you're trying to figure out who are these characters, there's no part of that says, here's the guy this movie is about. Because he's playing the game to get what he wants.
That's the point. That's the point.
It's such smart filmmaking and such great writing.
That's very assured. Yeah. So
assured, that's the right word. I love a good assured movie.
Yeah. Now I feel like a little weird that we're the ones talking about this, but that's okay. I think we did. I think I'm glad both of these were here. I really highly recommend the second film.
I want people to see it.
I think it should be seen, and I would love. I can't wait to see whatever series they come out with. I think it would be amazing. Even if it's watered down a little bit, at least it's going to be out there, and they've got stuff. They've got a lot of good stuff to reference and look at, and So I just think it's great. So. This is awesome.
What do you think they would? I'm assuming they're going to update it for like current time, so they're probably going to use different language, but still reference like current events rather than 70s.
I really don't know, but I mean
70s.
Yeah. If I was going to write that show, yes, I would absolutely set it in the year 2021. So I mean the fact is this is technically a period film.
Right.
It was made and takes place nearly 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Almost exactly 50 years ago. But the fact that it's so relevant today, I mean,
they could
I don't know
update
what
it.
approach they're going to take, but I would make it modern because it's exactly the same issues.
If they updated it,
problems.
Nothing has changed. If they update it, nothing has changed. All those same sentiments are there. The structural racism and the oppression, all that stuff is still there. So yeah, I mean,
pain is still there. That's right.
It's there. So, all right. I think it's a good one. I think these are awesome. So, I don't know what else to say.
I'm glad I can share it with you guys.
Do not see Penitentiary II. I guess if it comes on free somewhere, I saw it free. Actually, it was on something that IMDb. You could watch it with commercials.
Right.
But the other one,
if that's what you want. You want it to be even longer.
The other one, the Spook Who Sat at the Door, you can watch on YouTube. It's up there, and I think hopefully you'll get a little more play, and maybe it will. So,
well, I would recommend that people pick up the DVD because it's not unlike the Penitentiary II release. It's in really good shape.
That's great.
It's got some good extras and interviews, and the movie looks good and it sounds good. But I'll be honest, I mean. They announced today they're making a cable network television show out of this. This is a real American artifact. If Criterion Collection ends up putting out a Blu-ray or something like that, I'm there. I would totally be delighted to see it get another life in home video. So, or even a screening like it did at the New York Film Festival. So.
Actually, I think there were issues with the print. Somebody dug this print up or something. Yeah,
it was one of these movies that was lost.
Tim Reed from WKRP was able to get his hands on the print somehow. Because it had been lost forever.
Well, this not in terms of topic, but like more in controversy. This feels more in line with a movie like The Devils, which has not really seen a really good release. Warner Brothers does not want to let that one out. I mean, it's very controversial due to its blasphemous content, but like that is also another movie that has been suppressed and it's like a great hidden gem, I think.
Way to bring it back.
That's a good comparison.
Way to bring it back. Listen,
because it's suppressed by the studio. It's not like the McPherson tape that we talked about. That movie actually was thought to be lost until people found VHS copies, and then somebody in a warehouse actually found the movie. The Devils is not lost. If somebody wanted to release The Devils on home video or at a film festival or something, they could do it today. And that, I think, is what happened to this movie as well that we've been talking about, is that it was deliberately suppressed.
Right.
And it's great that people can finally see it.
That's not good. And by the way, Al, way to bring it back to cult films. Right? And let's remember, subscribe, hit the notification button. Let's go. Let's make this thing go. Let's help this series get out there, okay? I'm talking about the other series.
If anybody can get us a copy of The Devils, I'd be delighted to see it.
I think I had it. But I think I got the wrong copy, according to Al. Something was funky about that.
You're missing a few key scenes.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Well, a movie you want the watered down version of.
No, we do not want the watered down. I'm sure there was a lot of movies suppressed because of religion and all kinds of stuff going out.
Sure.
I mean, there are movies that wouldn't play in London, and they, whatever. But this one is more relevant because the FBI went in there and said, "You got to get rid of this. This guy's showing people how to go." And I mean,
that's the legend. Yeah,
right.
That's the legend.
So, all right, good show. I think. Hopefully we're around after this show. Maybe we will be. If so, we'll.
I think we'll be just fine. I'm happy. Right. I'm honored to be part of the conversation.
This was a good one. I thought this was a good one. I think people should go see that film. So, not Penitentiary II, the other one. Anyway. All right, guys. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you, guys.